Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session on getting women into academies and scientific leadership. Mentoring works. It's wonderful to see you all. Sorry for the late start. We're hoping this is going to be a really engaging and fun session, as well as being informative. And in particular, we're really wanting to get some, not just action points from this session, but some action. And we're depending on you to help us with that. So the concept of this panel is really quite straightforward. It's, let's take a look at the current situation of women scientists in leadership, in particular in the National Academies of Science. And we have two fantastic panelists who are going to talk us through the history and statistics of women's participation in science at academy level. Then we're going to move on to some fabulous case studies, if you like, but they're people with their own stories who are going to tell you how they have become the fantastic, inspiring leaders that they are, the journeys that they went on, and we're going to see if we might be able to get some guidance, some pointers and some ideas from them about how we can try and create a system and a process that will encourage and support particularly young women scientists from Africa to participate in decision-making processes and make a difference both nationally, regionally, and globally. And so, without more ado, and then the most important part of this session is the second half. So after you've had these presentations, there will be time for discussion with you. And then we're also going to try and consider how mentoring might be a way forward to make sure that we get more women into science. And we have Alison here who is going to present some of her ideas around that. And then we're hoping we can manage, even in this very big, overwhelming space, to have some quite intimate conversations and dialogue with you. So let's just pretend that this is a really small space. If any of you want to get up and move a bit closer together, get a better position, please do. And without more ado, I shall introduce us all. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Tonya Blowers. I'm the coordinator of the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, which is a UNESCO program unit. We're based in Trieste in northern Italy, but all of our work is done in the developing world and carried out by some of the amazing scientists that you may have met and seen during this conference. I'm absolutely delighted to say that with the International Science Council, we have had a fantastic collaboration, and together we have been able to bring 15 women scientists from 13 different African countries to participate in events, particularly at leadership levels. So on Monday, we had early career fellows participating in the International Science Council's Global Knowledge Dialogue. So this is all part of our attempt, our action to try and make sure that women scientists from developing countries are included in the most important conversations. So big thank you from OSE to the International Science Council for this wonderful collaboration that we're having. Some of you may also have come to our film festival that we had on Sunday evening. This film festival was another collaboration of ours, where we have been showcasing outstanding women scientists from the developing world in films that have quite a unique aspect, which is The OSD Visions series, for example, has been focusing on training local filmmakers based in developing countries to make their own films, so that they choose their own scientists, they choose their own context, and they choose their own narrative. And these films have been incredibly successful. And the ISC has been working with the BBC to make some really, really important films, also highlighting scientists from the developing world. So, without more ado, I'm going to briefly introduce you to each of the panelists, and then we'll get going with our discussion. So, first, over there, right at the end, we have Rosanne Diab, who is Emeritus Professor at the School of Environmental Sciences, University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Rosanne is former Executive Officer of the Academy of Science of South Africa, so extremely well placed to guide us in this conversation. Rosanne was also a special advisor to Gender Insight, and she chairs the Gender Advisory Committee of the World Academy of Sciences, otherwise known as TWAS. Welcome, Rosanne. And sitting next to Rosanne is Dorothy Ngila, who I'm sure many of you here know. Dorothy is the Director in Strategy, Planning and Partnerships Unit of South Africa's National Research Foundation, otherwise known as the NRF, and she also serves on the Global Research Council. Dorothy coordinates the NRF's contribution to the Science Granting Council's initiative in Sub-Saharan Africa, which serves 16 public science granting councils in East, West, and Southern Africa. Dorothy is also on the advisory board of the Alliance for Africa Partnership, and she is the immediate past chair of the OSD South Africa National Chapter Executive Committee. Next to Dorothy, hi Dorothy. Next to Dorothy is Priscilla Kolibea-Manti, who is a research scientist working in neuropharmacology and focusing on better therapeutic options for epilepsy by reducing diagnosing costs and improving therapy based on patients' genetics. Priscilla is from Ghana. She's a 2019 OWSD Early Career Fellow. If you want to know anything more about OSD programs, early career fellowships, PhD fellowships, please ask me, ask Priscilla, ask any of the OSD people that you find around. Priscilla is also fellow of the African Science Leadership Program. She's an affiliate of the African Academy of Sciences, as well as an affiliate of the World Academy of Sciences, and she's currently co-chair of the Global Young Academy. Sitting next to Priscilla is Elizabeth Banderson, who some of you may have seen as star of one of the OSD ISC BBC films on Sunday night. And if you haven't, please go to our booth that we have in the exhibition hall, number 203. All the films are on loop, and you can just sit down and watch them. And sometimes there is even popcorn there, if you would like a break. So Elizabeth is an insect scientist, that's how she describes herself, from Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, Bunda College in Malawi. She is also a 2018 OSD Early Career Fellow, and she's currently chair of the OSD Malawi National Chapter, and she is Secretary General of the Malawi Academy of Sciences, which I believe Elizabeth also was instrumental in founding. So again, another fantastic person to take us on this journey. I'm hopping across Alison for now to present Babalola, who is the Vice President of Africa for OSD, and she's also very, very recently, and I'm not sure she's even been enrolled yet, but she's been elected as the Vice President of the World Academy of Sciences on the TWAS Council. So this has been a fantastic breakthrough, and Babalola will be telling us about her story also. Babalola is really a unique and perfect example of how you can go through a series of fantastic programs if you are a brilliant, outstanding scientist as she is, and find yourself in this fantastic position. And finally, I'd like to introduce you to my co-conspirator, which is Alison Meston, who is Director of Communications at the International Science Council. Alison is originally from Australia, is now based in France at the International Science Council. And together we've thought up this panel and managed to bring this wonderful panel to you today. So really big thanks to Alison, and Alison's going to be introducing the mentoring part of the session quite shortly. So we're hoping this is going to be engaging, as I said. First, we're going to kick off with a conversation with Dorothy and Alison, and then we're going to have a series of what are called Ignite talks, you may have heard of. These are fast-moving presentations with visuals behind, where the presenters will speak just for 5 minutes and tell you about their journeys. So I'm now handing over to Dorothy. Dorothy, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Tonya, for the introduction and for setting the scene for our conversation this morning. So we often talk about the importance of collecting, analyzing, and reporting gender disaggregated data because it is such an important tool that enables us to make decisions in an informed way and that enables us to see what the status quo is. In 2013, 2014, we started to have a conversation between the Academy of Science of South Africa, the Network of African Science Academies, the IAP, now the Inter-Academy Partnership, about the importance of us understanding what the status of women in academy membership was across all of the academies of the world. This was then culminated in what was the first comprehensive survey of academies of science globally regarding the representation in 3 key areas: in academy membership and women's participation in academy governance structures, in regard to the disciplinary breakdown in academy membership, and in regard to the involvement of women in academy activities. What I'm going to share with you is a number of snapshot statistics, and I have done it not in a presentation because of the shock factor that by the time I'm done, I want you to experience. This is what we found. The average share of women members across 69 national academies was 12% in the world. 30 out of the 69 academies that responded to this survey had less than 10% of women as members of the academies. The academies in the Americas, led by the Cuban Academy of Sciences and the Caribbean Academy of Sciences, had the largest share of women researchers. Women were best represented in social sciences, humanities, and the arts, biological sciences, medical and health sciences. We know that it corresponds to what all of the other data sets let us know. They are least represented in mathematical sciences and in engineering sciences. It is exactly the same trend when you look at academies of science that are global in nature, for example, the World Academy of Sciences. 20% of women were represented in academy boards, which is higher than academy membership, which was at 12%. And this was even higher in those academies that were all-encompassing. In other words, they accept in their membership people from the humanities, arts, and the social sciences, in addition to the natural sciences. The US, Sweden, Switzerland, Cuba, Canada, Panama, the Netherlands, and Ireland had the largest share of women represented in their boards. 17% of these academies had or at that point had a woman who was a leader of the Academy as a president. Those academies that were all-encompassing of the different disciplines were more likely to be led by a woman than those who were focused on the natural sciences alone. 40% of these academies indicated that they had a document that explicitly mentioned the need to increase the participation of women in academy activities. And so here is your first disjuncture between what the documents are saying, what is implemented, and what the outcome is. Some of these academies had strategic programs regarding the increase in women in science, and these included participation of women in their evidence-based panels, Women in Science Awards, in their science engagement activities. And although a number of them had indicated that they are committed and they do support the increased number of women scientists in the pool of membership, a number of them said that they did not have an advisory mechanism on gender. So you have an increased number of pool of the number of women that are coming into the academies to be considered for membership, but there is no advisory mechanism in 61% of these academies that is able to provide the advisory function that says, how do we make sure that this increased pool of nominations actually gets itself into the membership? So that is a snapshot of what we found. This was in 2014, 2013. The report was published in 2015. 4 recommendations that we put in the report for what needs to happen at the time. That academies, the national academies needed to collect, analyze, and report gender disaggregated data on their membership and activities. That the inter-academy partnership needed to publish gender disaggregated data of its member academies in its annual report, that the annual report of the IAP needed to include the gender dimensions of IAP in its activities, and that we encourage the academies to establish permanent structures, in other words, these advisory mechanisms that would enable the academies to have strategic direction to implement women's gender mainstreaming activities. And here we were looking at structures that would support the academies in data collection, the advisory function, gender analysis of the activities of the academies, would play an advocacy role, and who would also be engaged in policy analysis. So that is what we found about academies. It is not an anomaly to the funding agencies. I am now in the funding agency world. When we look at the Global Research Council and all of us that participate in there, we are not collecting data in a systematic way. If we go and look at the university system, it is exactly the same in terms of leadership in that area. And when you look at it from a STEM perspective, the same statistics of the numbers being less represented in mathematical sciences and engineering sciences, that persists. What do we do about that at the leadership level? I think mentoring is such a critical perspective to be focusing on today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. And I can say that as a result of the report that Dorothy co-authored in 2016 on the state of women's leadership in academies, with Roseanne, who's now going to come to the podium. So the Organization for Women in Science shares a campus with the World Academy of Science. And Roseanne at the time was the chair of the global advisory, the gender advisory panel to TWAS. And we were able to work together. We were able to supply Roseanne with the numbers of women that were participating in the World Academy of Science. And Roseanne, who was on the TWAS Council, was able to insist that at the TWAS General Assembly every year, they had to report on the numbers of women in their academy. So I think that was a great partnership, Roseanne. Would you like to come to the podium? Now, Roseanne is going to tell us about the latest report that has come out. And I think the news is not so good, right, Roseanne?
So thank you very much, Tanya. Yes, I'm going to talk about the follow-up report to the one Dorothy mentioned, which we started the work in 2019, continued into 2020. It was an initiative of Gender Insight that I was with at the moment, but it was a partnership with the IAP, the Inter-Academy Partnership, and the International Science Council. So I think the very big question is, do you want the good news or the bad news first? So, let me just first of all say that it was an enlarged survey. We didn't only look at academies of science that were members of the Inter-Academy Partnership, we enlarged it to include academies that were members of the ISC. These were predominantly social science academies, but they increased our numbers. Eventually we had 85 academies that we were dealing with, which was up from the original number. We also included the National Young Academies and the Global Young Academy. So some of the statistics in comparison to what Dorothy has mentioned, women's share of membership increased from the 12% that she mentioned up to 17%. So this is as published in the 2021 report. If we use the same cohort of academies as the original study, it's 16%. All the academies showed an increase, which I suppose is good news, but there are still 19 academies across the globe that have got less than 10% women's members. We found that the percentage of women serving on the governing bodies was 27% in the previous study. It increased to 33%. So again, this is above the women's membership share, which I think shows to some extent that academies are trying hard to get women into leadership positions. What was interesting was the young academies really stood out from the senior academies. There were 10 young academies that had a greater percentage of women members than the first ranked or the highest ranked senior academy. It was once again the Cuban Academy of Sciences. It had increased their membership from 27% women to 33% women. So that's the senior academy with the highest membership. In the young academies, they're sitting at almost parity, some of them. We had also extended our survey not just to include looking at numbers, but looking at policies, and policies not only on promoting women into membership, but policies on sexual harassment and on equity, diversity, and inclusivity. We found that 36% of academies have got a document of some sort that recommends promoting women into membership, so they want to work on this. 22% have got a policy on sexual harassment. Relatively few are looking at EDI factors. The bad news, the really, really bad news, you heard from Dorothy about the recommendations that were made in the 2016 report, one of which was that these surveys should be undertaken on a regular basis, and another one was that the report should be discussed at a strategic planning meeting of the Academy. We found that only 6 academies that participated in the initial survey in 2015 discussed the report at a strategic planning session. I think that's a shocking statistic, shocking. So we make the same recommendation in this report. Academies need to take this seriously. They need to take this document, discuss it at a strategic planning session of the Academy, and decide how they're going to address women's membership of science academies. We've made a number of other recommendations. I won't go through all of them. The report is available on all of our websites, the ISC, the IAP, and Gender Insight. You can read all the recommendations there. But I think one of the very, very strong messages is that we need to repeat these surveys at regular intervals, and academies need to take this seriously. Otherwise, we're not going to change the system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. So we've set the scene. and right now it sounds like it's a really depressing scene, but we do have some great people in the room who are going to lift our spirits. And we have, this is just a note for the technicians, because of the time constraints, because we started so late, we're actually going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 Ignite talks, one after the other, so there won't be a break after the third one, which will give us plenty of time for our discussion afterwards. So please realize that these Ignite talks, if you haven't done one before, and I think that 2 of our panelists have never done one of these before, 3, you 2, Alison, it was your idea. 3 have not done one before, so things can go wrong because there's these fast-moving slides behind and you have to keep up with what's going on behind you. But it doesn't matter, I'm sure. If the slides are out of sync, it doesn't matter. We just keep talking, keep going through. So each talk takes about 5 minutes, and we'll just have one after the other, and then we'll hand over for our discussion. So the order of the talks is we're going to start with Priscilla Mante from Ghana. We're going to go next to Elizabeth Banderson from Malawi. Then we're going to go over to Babalola Olubukolola from Nigeria, now in South Africa. And then we're going to complete the series with Alison from Australia, France. Okay, over to you, Priscilla.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Priscilla, as has been introduced. I'm a neuroscientist and current co-chair of the Global Young Academy. So briefly, I will be talking about my journey to becoming a leader, which I have decided to tell as 6 key events that have led me here, and of course, including the role of mentors in my journey. And I call this my 6 post-it note story. Can I have my slides, please? So key event 1, I failed to get into medical school. I grew up as the quintessential smart child, even though 12-year-old me wanted to be the president of the World Bank. In a typical African society, the smart child goes to medical school. I ended up in pharmacy school, as fate will have it, but then it was in pharmacy school that I got introduced to my very first mentor. And my mentor is the one who helped me to discover my love for pharmacology and neuroscience, Professor Eric Wood. Key event 2. In 2016, I landed a postdoctoral position at the University of Michigan. And this was supposed to be just 1 year of skill building, but this opportunity brought me to my very first woman scientist mentor. And 6 years down the line, this woman scientist mentor has also become my sponsor, who tends to provide me with research support at 0 cost to me. Key event 3. In 2018, I was selected to become a young affiliate of the African Academy of Sciences. And through this opportunity, there was a mentoring scheme that was set up, and I was set up with yet another mentor. And this mentor was just supposed to guide me for 2 years. But till this day, this mentor has stayed with me and has provided the best guidance that any young researcher could ask for, Professor Rob Jenkins. Key event 4. In 2019, I call it my best year ever. I won several awards, but key among them was an OST Early Career Fellowship. And this fellowship is very important to me because it transformed my research. Through this fellowship, I was able to finally set up my own lab and then set up my own research team. Key event 5. Also in 2019, I became a fellow of the African Science Leadership Program. The ASLP is where the universe essentially put me in touch with a network of incredible people. And these people have helped me to believe in myself and essentially have helped me find my purpose. And it was through the ASLP that I was able to establish what I call my personal boardroom. Key event 6. This happened in 2021. I finally got selected to join the Global Young Academy. And this is very significant to me because this election was coming after I had 3 unsuccessful tries a few years before. And finally, on my 4th try, I was selected to become a member of the Global Young Academy. And I was able to do that with the help of my group of mentors. 1 year after I was elected as the Global Young Academy member, I had the privilege to be elected as co-chair of the Global Young Academy. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how I got here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here. Elizabeth, as Tonya has already said, my journey is quite different from Priscilla's, but I think all of us have key events in life that lead us to where we are. So can I have my slides, please? So I'm Elizabeth Banderson, an OSD 2018 fellow, and I'm from Lilongwe University of Agriculture in Malawi. You know Malawi for several reasons, but I guess today you know it differently. My journey started with a why when I lost the most important person in my life. That was my dad at the age of 6. And he died due to chemical exposures because of the work he was doing. And so I was determined to help make people's lives better so that they don't lose their loved ones the way I did. And the only way I could do that was becoming a medical doctor. And I ended up not becoming one. I decided to do something different, and I started a journey of 1,000 miles, which I thought I could do it alone by trying to find out ways in which I can protect people from chemical exposures, and also that they don't die earlier than their age and they don't go through what I went through. And so I wanted to go far, and one of the people told me that if you want to go far, you can go alone. Fast, if you can go alone, but if you want to go far, let's go together. So I ended up into an intensive mentoring program under Award, which exposed me to different leadership trainings, built my science skills. I ended up working with one of the companies, chemical companies in the world, Dow AgroSciences, and I ended up enrolled in a PhD at Michigan State University, where I studied something different, insects that make us lose a lot of crops and make us apply a lot of pesticides. Specifically, I was interested in the sense of smell because it's one of the ways through which we can control insects without applying a lot of pesticides. So I was exposed to one of my first female mentors after my first male mentors, Dr. Kerr Dong, and that was us in her lab. It was my first time to work in such a diverse lab, where she challenged me to study the insect brain. I never thought that I would go to that direction. And up to this point, all I wanted was just to be in the lab, stay in the lab, and do what I can. And I realized I had to come back home, and I had one choice. Go back to MSU, study the insect brains, or stay in Africa, do what you're supposed to do, or forget about your science because you can't do it in Africa. I was offered different opportunities, including the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine under the PVEC program, which gave me a grant, but it was quite different from what I got under OSD, because they gave me a grant that I had to handle myself and build my own lab, and this was the change of everything. I had to do the science back home. But for me, just doing the science was not enough. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to bring other people along. And again, as your science leader, you get to meet a lot of hardships in between. We all suffered from COVID, but I had to go back to resilience, where we all have experienced it. I don't have to go how it affected all of us. The journey is unique. But for me, as a science leader, I had to come back to my feet and be resilient and go back to the lab despite whatever I went through as a scientist. And so through the process, I realized that I needed to bring on a lot of people along as I worked as a scientist. And what I decided to do was to look into the future and see that all of us, we are gifted to do something different. And that why that keeps us going every day has to keep on going. I decided to start investing in the young students. And then I thought, if I invested only in the people that I work with, that's not enough. I still need to do more. I went ahead and worked with different students now on campus and also outside campus and across the country, where we had to start teaching them about science. But still, that wasn't enough for me. And then through the OST program, I got exposed to different networks that helped me get to now know about the Academies of Science. And then I realized that of all the science, the good science we do in Malawi, we are not well connected. We don't know much. We don't know what the world is doing out there because we missed one important thing, which was the Academy of Sciences. So we worked very hard and put the team together and bring the Academy of Sciences in Malawi in existence for the first time with me as the leader. And I never thought that would happen. And not just that, like what Tonya said, if you go on the BBC and International Science Council website, you find one of the scientists that is trying to save Malawi's crops, and that's me. I never thought I would get there if it was not for mentorship. So maybe the question that I would end with as I get out of this stage is to ask you, why do you do your science? What keeps you out of bed every night for you to do what you're supposed to do? And we all have a choice to use the gift of our life, I would say the gift of science, to make the world a better place, or not bother at all. But I think because we are here, we are all bothered and we want to make the world better by using the science that we have. So let's push women forward and stand forward to push the science to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Babalola. My slide. Yeah, may I have the slides, please? There are talents in Africa, of which I'm one. My desire is to find solution to crop problem, solution to pest problem, solution to what the community will benefit from, and that is the SDG 2, to solve hunger problem. I thrived in how? Going from one university to the other. And today, when OWSD picked me up, that was the done deal. It was the beginning, and off I went to Kenya. From there, that was just the beginning, but from there, I've conquered many nations, up to 40. It's not a joke. I competed with a lot of issues, searching for job, looking for husband, looking for babies, but here I am today. I have the big 5. Anyway, today, as I must say that the host institution supported me in diverse way. Kudos to my institution, the Northwest University. From there, I thrived, and I reproduced myself over and over again. Even as an early career scientist or a mid-career scientist, I begin to turn out graduates, 40 PhDs, 30 PhDs, 30 masters, and a lot of other undergraduate students that have come out from my products. As a senior scientist today, NRF rated, and even as an established research scientist, I know it doesn't just come like that. It's the product of many institutions. And I will say, of a truth, I benefited from my mentors. I benefited from Fagade. I benefited from Sonia. I benefited from Don Kawan. I benefited from Bernard Glick. I benefited from Johnny Smith. Anyway, I pick up their leadership skill, and for the first 20 years of my life, I can say of a truth that I walk in their shadow. I ride on the shoulders of the giant, and that is what made me what I am today. I must say a very big thank you, even to the world-class service of the National Research Foundation, the people-centered organization, because it strives for excellence. I benefited from it in terms of bilateral grants, equipment grants, research grants, mobility grants, and today I can say, because of the grants, I've been able to achieve an age index of over 50, with over 300 publications, and with conferences all over the world. My book chapters are 27, and I, of one, have edited 3 books on my own. My professional networks are superb. I'm not a predator, so I don't just take from them, I give back. And I must also say that academic recognition that I have achieved today is not a personal thing alone. I benefited from a lot of people that work with me in one way or the other. And of a truth, I say that indeed my students or parents, name it, have helped. Look here. Number 1 in Africa, according to Clarivate. And I must say, it is not a joke, but indeed I've worked. And not that I've worked, but indeed I've met with other think tanks that have helped me. I'm talking about other homemakers. I'm talking about trailblazing women. I'm talking about those who are not afraid to show me the way and to tell me this is the stairs to climb. Yes, there are challenges that are facing women, but HAM will not capitalize on those challenges because it's like looking at the half-empty part of the cup. Anyway, I put my strength in what I have. I overlook the weaknesses. What I have are the helping hand. I have a loving husband. What I have are indefatigable parents. They are always with me. What I have are students, the students that you can rely upon. They are hardworking. And indeed, today, what we have achieved so far couldn't have been possible without soft skill. Soft skill in terms of my being assertive. Soft skill in terms of being a go-getter, a time management individual, somebody that can communicate myself and express in any way. Self-care, I don't joke with it because the machine that is doing the work must be cared for. And of a truth, I exercise, I eat, I talk, I play. I don't take things, I don't take myself too seriously. That is why I set the trend. Thank you.
How am I going to follow these amazing scientists on the stage? As Tonya introduced me before, my name is Alison Meston, and I'm the Director of Communications for the International Science Council. And we're ready for my slides. Oh, we've missed a slide. We need to go back and stop. My story is about anger, hope, action, and it's my story in mentoring. And when I say anger, I don't mean the rampaging, bang your fists anger. I'm talking about getting issues together, developing plans, and putting them into action. And this is my journey in mentoring. Well, we are having trouble with the slides, Tonya. Did you press play? Here we go. So my first understanding of the way systems, when they don't work, was when I was a scout. And when I spoke up, I was seen as aggressive, but the boys, when they spoke up, they showed leadership. And I understood that there was a problem. And so I'm going to talk to you today about the formula anger, hope, action in how we build mentoring programs. Anger is the issues, hope is the plan, and action is putting that plan into place. I'm sharing with you 3 anger, hope, actions, and my first is the World Association of Newspapers Women's Mentoring Program in Africa. And we discovered that women were not in leadership positions in media companies. It meant that women's voices in media were not heard. So we did some research and we found out that a news organisation's revenue went up when women were part of the editor and leadership programs of that news organisation. And we showed that revenue went up, the men listened. And we developed a mentoring scheme that started in 3 countries and is now in 20 countries across the world. The men who ran the media companies went from being gender aware to being gender sensitive. And now that key driver of action and mentoring editors and getting their skills up and making sure that the men who owned those media companies came with us, we are now on the way to being gender transformative. My second story is about music, and you might be thinking, how has this got to do with science? Let's remind ourselves that Article 27 of the Declaration of Human Rights, where science sits, is also about culture. My 2 favourite musics are opera and drum and bass. You might not have heard of drum and bass, but it's an electronic music scene that has its roots in the wicked beats of black music. I love it. Oh, and when I said that anger wasn't about being on a rampage, well, let me tell you, in 2018, at a music festival called Rampage, there were 55 artists and no women. I went on my own rampage, and I talked to DJ Flight and DJ Mantra, who started EQ50, a women's gender responsive unit for drum and bass. And together with DJ Sweet Pea and MC Chickaboo, we devised a mentoring scheme. And these are our mentees, which started in 2020. We wrote to record companies and said, will you mentor young women in the music scene so that they can get their skills up? And people were a bit concerned. They were saying, hang on a minute, it's not about gender, it's about merit. And we had to teach them and say, actually, the merit is there, you're just not looking at the right pool. It's about talent, and you're not looking at the talent pools that exist. And we know that women DJs are talented because this is one of our mentees, Nia Archives, who won a MOBO award for one of the best newcomers in the industry this year. So it's absolutely not about merit. It's not about being gender, it's about merit. The next story is not my story, but it's about a radical solution. And that radical solution for gender imbalance, and it talks about academies, is from the Netherlands Royal Academy for Sciences. And I think that they might have read the gender report that came out. Because in 2017, they had a look at their fellows, and they only had a very limited amount of women. And in 2017 and 2018, for 2 years, they only accepted female fellows. It was a radical solution to address the imbalance, but it wasn't plain sailing, because people said, hang on a minute, it should be about merit, and you're undermining women. And what we're saying is, no, you are looking at the wrong pool. And there is an ocean of talent out there that we need to look at. And so the Anger, Hope, Action model still applies. Women at the Academy saw the barriers, they devised an action plan, but they got the Academy on board. They needed to make sure that everyone was part of the solution. And so Anger, Hope, Action is the formula. It's about getting angry and identifying the issues. It's about developing a plan and giving hope. And the most important part of the action, the most crucial part, is that the industry has to have industry solutions for industry problems. And we have to look at it holistically in order to make the changes that we desire. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, everybody. Can we just have a huge round of applause for all of our wonderful panelists? So we've had a lot of information and a lot of moving and powerful stories. Before we move on to our sort of mentoring get-together, what I'd like to do is, first of all, maybe collect, shall we say, 3 questions from the audience, and then we'll come back to the panelists and ask for their answers to the questions, and also any other comments that they might have on the experience of listening to other people on the panel as well. So, do we have a roving microphone? Is there somebody that can handle the microphones? Okay, and I can see a hand up right at the front. So there's one question here, and then we need 2 more questions. One there, and one there. Okay, perfect. Could you please say your name and where you're from, and perhaps where you work or what your interest is before you speak? Thank you.
Okay. Can I speak? Okay, morning. I'm Bernice Bankole.
Bernice, sorry. We have selected 3 questions down here at the front, and we need the microphone down here. On every pew there is a microphone. Ah, there you go. Sorry. So you just go up to there.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Professor Hassina Mori. I'm the Vice President of the International Union of Geological Science. I stress on geological sciences. I'm from University of Johannesburg, and my question is to Dorothy Ngila. We heard first, I want to say congratulations to all those exciting speeches you gave, very inspiring. So Dorothy, you mentioned about some statistic data about women in mathematics and other disciplines, but I haven't heard a word about geoscience. So I'm just wondering if I missed it or you missed it. Could you please let me know? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and we'll take the second and third, and then we'll go over to the panelists. So second question down here at the front.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Michael Mauritius. 3 points. One, being a woman is like poverty. My own case, we started very poor. And being poor is a tremendous stimulus to succeed. 2 examples, 2 solutions. One works, one doesn't work. One solution that worked is Marie Curie. She persisted. The day she went to the Academies des Sciences in Paris and asked for membership, people laughed and said, who? A woman? And eventually, 5 years later, they had to invite her to join. So pushing forward, aggressiveness, as somebody said, is a solution. What is not a solution? And I object to, for example, the 7 of you are only women. Should be some men as well there. What is not a solution? I'll give that example, but it's from home. My wife discovered that 52% of the population of Mauritius are women. And she created a political party called the Majority Party and said, women vote for women. A lot of people voted, but they didn't get anybody elected. This is not a solution. In other words, to put women separately is not a solution. And lastly, in the Academy of Science, we offered at one point 1 woman to become president. And this is the excuse, because of children, of the husband, my job, and so on, declined. Only job you could accept is that of 2nd vice president, which is no job at all. So the 4 examples we had today are people who started slowly and really pushed forward. And I think this is very, 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 very good for science to have the contribution of women fully like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a third comment from the audience,
yes,
I think was...
I'm here. Thank you. Hi. So thank you very much. My name is Professor Catherine Ngila. No relationship with Dorothy. Of course, we are related. She's my daughter. Amazing ladies in front there. I've shared wonderful stories, which really left me speechless. Now, my question is, if you do research and you collect data, what would you say is the percentage of men's contribution to women's success? That is the first question. And then secondly, in terms of the leadership, I'm also the former acting executive director of the African Academy of Sciences. And we still have less than 20% of women in fellowship. fellows of the African Academy of Sciences. And now my question then is, from the projection of studies that Dorothy and Roseanne, they have done, what do you think is the future of improving the percentage of women leaders in the academies? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ngila. I am going to pass over straight away to Dorothy. I think the first question and the third question, perhaps you can tackle, Dorothy, and also Roseanne can join in with those questions. Over to you, Dorothy.
Thank you. So before I can tackle the question that you just asked, sir, I'm going to be slightly direct with you. I think that it is inappropriate I think it is inappropriate to compare women and poverty. Because we are here discussing the issue of increasing the participation of women in science, in leadership, across all the different sectors of our world, simply because for years and years and years, society has been shaped by patriarchy. Society has been shaped by decision-making that was not inclusive. We are not here because we chose to be here. We are here because we have come into a structure that has been discriminatory and oppressive towards women. And so I find that comment to be inappropriate, if I may. To respond to your question, we did have quite a bit of information in the report on geography and geology. So I have to say that the disciplines and the way that they're classified amongst the academies can differ. Sometimes it's geography, environmental sciences, it's mineral sciences. They're all grouped together. But the conclusion from our study is that they are at the lower end, which is also the trend. But we chose here to really focus on what was the highest representation and what was the lowest representations in terms of the disciplines. The report is available on the Academy of Science of South Africa's website, and there is disaggregated information there according to the different disciplines. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Roseanne, do you have anything to add?
So just to elaborate on the disciplinary breakdown, geography and environmental sciences falls into the earth science category. And if I remember correctly, the percentage was in the early 20s. And as Dorothy said, we just highlighted the one that was the highest, which is biological sciences, 27%, 28%. And right at the bottom is always mathematics, ICT, engineering, usually below 10%. And then to answer Catherine's quite difficult question about what is the role of men in women's success, I don't think we've got any statistics on that. But certainly if you ask people about mentoring, mentoring comes from many, many quarters, and there are many men who have played a very important role in women's progress to leadership position, both family members and professors at university. So I think it just depends on the personal relationships that are established, and I can't put a statistic to it.
Thank you so much, Roseanne. I'd just like to ask any of the other panel members if you have anything else that you'd like to say in response to the questions or in response to the others. I know that Babalolo is burning to say something, and then Alison.
Yeah, I want to contribute to the aspect of having women as members of the academy. I want to encourage our women to ensure that you apply. You cannot be a member if your application never gets there. So apply. And another thing is, take the application, show a senior scientist to help you to look at it. If you are not up to measure, then you know all the deficiencies. Work towards that deficiencies against the next call that will be made. Thank you.
Thanks, Tonya. Just the 3 experiences that I shared. With the women editors in Africa, we found that if a politician was doing a doorstop interview, they would do it at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because then it would go on the 6 o'clock news and there was no time for journalists to properly digest what they were saying. And what are women doing at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon? They're often picking up children from school. So the men became very important so that they could negotiate with their partners to look after the children, so that they could become the political editors instead of always being perhaps, talking about health and beauty. With my music women, we're having a second round. It's just opened up, and for the first time we are at this time including male mentors, because they are gender transformative and they are allies. Just because you're a woman, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a gender transformative ally. So I think men are crucial in this and have to be part of the conversation. And of course, with the academies, we must have the support of men. So men are crucial in this, and we all are crucial in this. We all must be gender transformative, and we all must be speaking in those terms. And as Roseanne said, we must challenge, and I'm going to challenge the academic members of the International Science Council and our unions to go back and have a discussion about that report. I'm going to make sure it happens. Thank you, Tonya. Thank you, Alison. Priscilla, Elizabeth, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. So, responding to how many men have contributed to the success of women, I think I'm the example. All my mentors ever since I was young, they were male, except as I went up. And then again, mentorship is not something that you also go ask for. It's not something that people would come and approach you. It's a decision you make after you make your self-assessment and see, where do I lack? And I must say that I started with my one mentor. I ended up with 10 or more, looking at the deficiencies I had. So I had a mentor who is going to coach me about life, a mentor who is coach me about science, and a mentor who is going to expose me to opportunities. So it's all about you sitting back and say, where am I going? What do I want? And how do I get there? And then remember, like what Professor Babalola has said, you must invest in your soft skills, which I think most of us women miss it. You need to be very emotionally intelligent. You need to be very assertive. You need to learn to say no. Because one thing I've learned as I grew in this career, a lot of opportunities will present at your doorstep. But then how do you sit down and say, how do I choose which is the right one that takes me to where I want to head towards? So there are others that I had to let go and say, as far as I'm concerned, this is the direction I'm going, and I'm going to stick to that by looking at the shadows that were cast before me. Not people I asked for, but people I also just sat down and observed on how they were doing their things. So if we were to look at the statistics, I think there are a lot of men who have done that. There are a lot of women who have done that. But it's also up to you as a person to sit down and see, where do I want to go and how do I get there?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Priscilla.
Hello?
It's on.
It sounds okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to add...
No, it's not okay.
Can you hear me?
It'll come. Yeah. You can pass this one. Here you go.
Hello. All right. Thanks. I just wanted to add on to, I felt the question about what was the contribution of men to women's success was very important, because I have to admit, a lot of the time when we have these conversations, it sort of appears that we are beating down on the men. But just like Elizabeth said, I think for those of us who are in fields that are very male-dominated, it happens that a lot of the time we are actually helped out by the men. I am in a similar field. So like you saw from my presentation, my very first mentor happened to be a man. And he actually shaped my idea of what mentorship is. And it's not just giving advice, but actually holding somebody's hand, walking them through doors, being a sponsor where they can't speak for themselves. And I have so many other mentors, like Professor Rob Jenkins, who I speak to every other week, and essentially is my sounding board. So I think if we actually do the research, we would be amazed at how much men actually contribute to our success. Our husbands are very instrumental in helping us to find our feet. And secondly, I also want to contribute to women getting into academies. Yes, it is important for us to put ourselves up for selection or election or applying into the academy, but we also need to consider the fact that for a lot of these senior academies, you can only get in there by a nomination. Somebody has to say your name in a room for you to be able to get in there. And those mechanisms by which we elect people into academies are some of the things that we need to seriously look at. If we want to be inclusive, we need to provide opportunities for people to get in that do not necessarily depend on certain individuals.
Okay, I think we have time, even though the panel was due to end at 1 o'clock, which is 3 minutes left, but we did start very late. So I think what we could do, if you would just take 5 minutes perhaps to turn to the people near you and come up with maybe just one thing that you're going to take away from this session that you can then share with us up here, and then we will also come up with one highlight, one essential thing to move forward from this session that we would like to share.
I want to ask a question that I think is really, really important. Because of my age, I only had white men mentors. I mean, because there were women in the academy. So I met a woman who was mentoring a lot of women in chemistry. And she said something that was really profound, that she did not want to mentor the women to go and become like the men. That she wanted to mentor the women to become transformative for the field, for the science. So what would a transformed science look like in terms of the academies, in terms of the institutions? And I think that this group can probably help us understand where we're trying to go. This is not just about the numbers. No. This is about the science and about changing the science. So what would that transformation look like?
That's the challenge for you. Well, back over to the panel. Does anybody want to reply to Roseanne's dying to reply to that one?
Yeah, I can make a comment. Thank you, Shirley. I think you're absolutely right. It's not just about the numbers. It's about transforming the practices that we've had in the past. And I'll just give a very simple example. I've just been undertaking a study looking at women's leadership across African universities. And one of the things that stands out is that there's a mid-career blockage. Women advance quite rapidly in their early careers, much the same as men, and then comes this mid-career blockage, which we can understand is due to many factors. It's the childcare burden, the burdens of home responsibilities, which are still largely falling on men. The fact that women often select teaching and outreach activities in their university careers voluntarily. They do that because they enjoy engaging with people and focus less on research. Because when you're burdened, when your time is very, very precious, it's the research that goes. You still teach, you still do your home care responsibilities, you still do the outreach activities that you have to do, but the research falls behind. So one of the things when we look at sort of transforming the sector might be to think about a different way of evaluating the whole person and what their contribution is. And I really don't want to be the person who's quoted as saying that we're going to devalue the value of scientific production and publications. I'm not saying that. It's just a more holistic way of looking at a person's contribution to science. It can come in many, many ways. And I think that going forward, perhaps this is something that women might want to transform the way in which we evaluate your contribution. Thanks.
Thank you, Roseanne. And I would just like to add something to that as well, which is that in terms of the whole person, I think that we're used to, as women, apologizing for our detours, for the time out that we take, rather than seeing that as contributing to the fantastic contribution that we can make to science and to many other pursuits, because we have such an intimate knowledge of community needs, and we're on the front line in that way. I think that makes us better scientists, and we know who and how our research can be best implemented as well. I'll pass on to Dorothy, and I think I'm sorry, we were hoping to have a discussion with everybody. I think that's going to be quite difficult to manage, and we don't have the time. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to ask each panel member to make a parting comment, possibly about, what is the one thing that you would change if you could to get more women into science. And then I really hope that we'll be able to follow up this conversation during lunch, and just keep talking. Over to you, Dorothy.
Thank you. So I have 2 points that I'm going to make quite quickly. The first one is that we have to think about a systematic approach that thinks about the scientists, the woman scientists, in a holistic way. Academies represent the very high end of celebrating excellence in science. Before you can get there, you are in a research performing institution, you are in a research funding environment, you are in an environment where there are scientific and professional associations. And so in the context of mentoring and in the context of building a holistic scientist who is able to get into the membership of academies, a mentoring approach, the way that we engage in this question of women in science has to take that into consideration. I want to end by talking about something that is very related to mentoring, but that is very powerful, and that is the power of having sponsors. Sponsors assist us to be able to enter into the academy through the networks that they have. They assist us to be able to serve on boards. They are plugged into the best research centers, the best international networks. And my take home is you plug yourself into the different sponsors that are in the different areas of a research career where you know that you need to build a portfolio that allows you to end up as a member of an Academy of Science, that allows you to end up as a co-chair of a young academy. And so find the sponsors. Most of them are men. They are the ones who are sitting on the boards. They're the ones who are serving as the excellent scientists that can introduce you to the chief editor of the journal that you want to publish in. Sponsorship matters, and sponsorship is really powerful for women in science. Thank you.
So, as co-chair of the Global Young Academy, I'd just like to bring in one thing which we haven't mentioned, which is the issue of the National Young Academies. So there's a global movement of National Young Academies, which are essentially the junior versions of the senior academies we have in the various countries. Global Young Academy was set up, which admits very bright and then promising scientists from all over the world, and then decided to promote or replicate the similar concept in other young academies. One of the things we do for the Young Academy movement is to encourage a working relationship between the senior academies and the young academies. And as you heard from the statistics, the young academies tend to have a better gender parity compared to the senior academies. And the reasons why the National Young Academies have those numbers is that we are intentional about the way we select our members. In the Global Young Academy, for instance, we intentionally incorporate diversity factors into the selection process. And I'm proud to say that we currently have 53% women in the Global Young Academy. And I think it's something that the senior academies can learn from. And I also think that the relationship between the young academies and the senior academies actually provides a route for women to move from the young academies into the senior academies. We have a similar success story in Ghana where we try to provide that route. And I'm glad to say that this year we managed to get arguably the youngest member of the senior academy elected from our Ghana National Academy, and she happens to be a woman. So I think we need to focus more on those relationships and build them further to see how well we can get the women into the senior academies. Thank you.
So I think Priscilla and Dorothy have gone ahead and echo what I wanted to say, because I wanted to end with a question looking at the presentation that was made earlier, that we have a lot of women in the Global Young Academies than in the senior academies. Then I was asking myself the question, where is the leaking pipe? Where do we lose these women from the Global Young Academies to the senior academies? And I think that's something that we seriously need to look into and fix where that leakage is so that we can put women forward. And one of the things that Tonya said is that women, we are fond of apologizing for the detours that we make. And I think as we look into the journey of sciences, we need to make sure that those detours don't become an inconvenience to somebody's career, but actually fuel them to move forward. So I think there are quite a lot of leaking pipes as scientists, as governments, as International Science Council, as OST, that we need to look into to make sure that the young women that we carry through from the young age, they go to the way up. Like in my case, I can actually count how many professors Malawi has as a country, and maybe less than 2% of those are women. And if you go into the actual sciences, I can actually count maybe 2 or 3 that are at my institution. Where are we getting things wrong? So maybe for a long time we've been saying we want to push women forward, but maybe it's time to take a few steps backwards and see where are these leaking pipes and how do we fix them so that the effort that we're putting at the young scientists should be the same as we go up. Thank you.
I would like to do some very practical challenges And these challenges include working with everybody on this stage, Tonya. So I want to work with Roseanne to continue these studies. I want to find out how do we continue these studies because we have a baseline now, and I want those to keep going. Dorothy, you and I mentioned before about young academies in Africa, and the International Science Council has opened up membership for all young academies across the world, but also in Africa, to join the International Science Council because we're really serious about the diversity of voices. So I want to work with you to get those discussions going for the young academies that you know. And I want to work with OSD and TWAS to make sure that we develop a plan of action for some of the things that we've discussed today. And I want us to hold a meeting before the 11th of February, 2023. And if you don't know what the 11th of February is, it's the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. I want to hold a Zoom meeting where we come and talk about some of these things, and we can use our collective convening power to get some action done.
I would like to invite all to join me in my community engagement project. I set out to go to schools in the villages because I'm thinking of the girl child, and I said, by the time we are up there, it may be too late to tell me to do science because I've been formed. I mean, my mind is set, and I've never been exposed to science right from the onset. So I said it's good to go back to the basics, and that is to work with them at the grassroots. But I noticed there was a big challenge of English. So English literacy happens to be a problem. When you go to the schools that from the well-to-do parents where they drive their children to school, that isn't a problem. But when you go deep into the villages, then you see the reality of what I'm saying, that even to talk science, the communication method is lacking. So I'm inviting you all to join me in my community engagement projects, is to work with a girl child, and I'm doing it at the village level. There are ways you can team up, and it could be in form of donation of science books. It could be in form of donation of English literatures. It could be in form of you volunteering your time and say, I'm going to come and spend 1 week with you, whereby I'll walk with you to different schools per day. And that is not just a talk anymore, that is action. Thank you.
And with those words, I'm going to draw an end to this panel, and I would just like to say what a privilege it has been to chair this panel and to listen to these very powerful African women scientists' voices, and to request all of you in the room, all of you out of the room, to invite African women scientists to speak about their wonderful research also whenever they can, and give them a place, and you take your place at the table whenever possible, because it's been such an interesting and important conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you.